an isolated telegraph station. The date is September 1st, 1859, late at night. An operator sits under the green shade of an oil lamp, the telegraph relay on his desk clicking away with its usual rhythm. Suddenly, the pace changes. It becomes erratic, then impossibly fast, a frantic, unreadable chatter. He checks the battery connected to his instruments. It's working fine. He disconnects it. The clicking doesn't stop. If anything, it grows stronger, the metal arm hammering with a strange new energy. The paper tape spools out, covered in gibberish. He looks out the window. The sky to the north is shimmering with curtains of green and violet light. He wires a message to his colleague in the next city, the electrical circuit powered by nothing more than the planet itself. He and thousands of other operators across the globe just became part of the single largest, most well-documented instance of a global information network running without man-made power, not as a glitch that broke the system, as an event that powered it. Over the next half-century, that entire continent-spanning network, a system literally plugged into the Earth, would be systematically ripped out and replaced. The story you hear is that it was an upgrade. The evidence suggests it was something else, a disconnection. The premise of the video's title is a tantalizing one, that in a single, coordinated 18-month window, every telegraph line in America was cut over. Upon investigation, that turns out not to be the literal truth. There was no single 18-month legislative act. The reality is both more complex and more revealing. The change was a process, a multi-decade engineering overhaul driven by corporate necessity, but it was systemic. It was total, and it was based on a single, foundational decision to unplug the entire network from the ground beneath it. To understand what was lost in that decision, you first have to understand what the original network actually was. On May 24, 1844, Samuel F. B. Morse sent the first commercial telegraph message from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore. The system he designed was revolutionary in its simplicity. It used just one wire. A single copper line ran from the operator in one city to the operator in the next. At each end, that wire was connected to a large metal plate buried deep in the moist soil. The planet Earth itself was used to complete the circuit. The system wasn't just built asterisk on the Earth was part of the machine. This single-wire Earth return system was cheap, efficient, and it worked. By October 24, 1861, the first transcontinental telegraph connected the coasts, its single wire humming with messages carried on a current that completed its journey through thousands of miles of rock, water, and soil. But this grand planetary circuit had an unforeseen property. Because it was an open system, physically grounded in the planet, it was also an antenna for any other electrical currents flowing through the Earth. These are called telluric currents, and they are a natural feature of our world. Most are weak, but some, driven by solar storms, are immensely powerful. That brings us back to the night of September 1st, 1859. The Carrington Event, a colossal geomagnetic storm, slammed into the Earth. Telegraph operators' logs, many of which are still preserved, describe wires throwing off sparks, paper catching fire, and operators receiving shocks. But they also describe something else. For hours, they could disconnect their batteries and send messages using only what they called the auroral current. The network was alive. This is the central, documented anomaly. A communications network that could, under the right conditions, be powered by the sky. A system that could receive and transmit information from a non-man-made source. So why would anyone tear that out? The official explanation is entirely logical. It has nothing to do with auroras and everything to do with noise. The world of the 1880s was not the world of the 1840s. Cities were exploding with new electrical technologies. High-voltage AC power grids were being strung up, their wires buzzing with energy. Electric trolley lines crisscrossed city streets. their motors sparking and drawing massive currents from overhead wires that often used the ground as a return path. For the old, earth-grounded telegraph system, this was a catastrophe. The principle of electrical induction means that any changing current in one wire will create a stray current in a nearby wire. The vast, open circuit of the telegraph network became a continent-sized antenna for the unwanted noise of the industrial age. The faint click-click-click of a distant message was drowned out by the roar of 1,000 dynamos and the crackle of 1,000,000 new lights. The problem was especially acute for a new technology, the telephone. The American Telephone and Telegraph Company, AT&T, was building its long lines division after 1885, aiming to provide clear, reliable voice communication over hundreds, then thousands of miles. Morse code could be interpreted through static. The human voice could not. AT&T's business model depended on quality of service. They needed to deliver a quiet line. Their engineers found a solution that was expensive but effective: the metallic circuit. Instead of using the earth as the return path, they ran a second, dedicated wire all the way back from the destination. The entire circuit was now contained in this pair of wires. It was a closed system, balanced and isolated from the electrical chaos in the ground. It was quiet, predictable, controllable, and for a company selling voice clarity, it was the only path forward. Western Union, the telegraph monopoly, soon followed suit. To compete in a world dominated by the telephone and noisy with electricity, they too began the enormous project of converting their single-wire network to metallic circuits. This is the official history, and it is correct. The transition to metallic circuits was a necessary and logical engineering response to the problems of induction in an industrializing world. A single-wire system simply cannot function reliably when it's wrapped in a web of high-voltage power lines. But here is where the official record does something that happens often when you look at the history of technology. It narrows. It defines the problem in a way that allows for only one solution. In the engineering journals of the period, the natural telluric currents were lumped in with the man-made interference. It was all just noise, a nuisance to be eliminated. The solution that silenced the noise from the trolley lines also made an entire system deaf to the signals from the planet. The idea of a single 18-month window for this changeover is the hook, the thing that suggests a sudden, mysterious event. The reality, as found in corporate archives and engineering journals from the time, is a systemic corporate policy enacted over decades. The primary period of transition stretched from the 1880s to the early 1900s. The decision was made not in a legislature, but in boardrooms. AT&T, with its control of the Bell patents, set the new standard. Their need for high-quality audio made the old system obsolete for them, and their market dominance forced the rest of the industry to adapt or die. The Great Disconnection wasn't a conspiracy. It was the logical outcome of a new business model that prized clarity and control above all else. But was that the only possible path? If you look outside the mainstream engineering consensus of New York and Boston, you find another thread. Down in Murray, Kentucky, a farmer and inventor named Nathan B. Stubblefield was working on a totally different problem. He wasn't trying to isolate his technology from the earth. He was trying to use the earth as his technology. According to local newspaper accounts and patent filings preserved in Kentucky archives, he successfully transmitted voice and music over distances of several thousand feet. At the very moment, the entire telecommunications industry was spending millions to insulate its wires from the ground, Nathan Stubblefield was proving that you could transmit information without any wires at all, using the ground as the medium. He was a man listening intently to the ground, while the rest of the technological world was trying to block its ears. Stubblefield was not alone. The idea that the Earth was more than just a passive wire was being explored at the highest levels of theoretical science. In Colorado Springs, from 1899 to 1900, The physicist and engineer Nikola Tesla was conducting his own radical experiments. Tesla's work, detailed in his meticulously kept Colorado Springs notes, went far beyond simple ground conduction. He theorized that the entire planet was not just a conductor, but a resonant body. Now place these threads side by side. It's not just the telegraph operators of 1859, pragmatically using a strange power they didn't understand. It's not just the Kentucky farmer, a tinkerer proving you could send voice through the soil. It's that all of them, the frontline user, the grassroots inventor, and the world-class theorist, sourced independently from different disciplines, all pointed to the same radical conclusion. The Earth was not a source of noise. It was a potential medium, a battery, a resonant instrument. Let's return to the telegraph operator on that September night in 1859. At the time, his experience seemed like a freak occurrence, an act of God that disrupted the network. In the context of Stubblefield and Tesla, it looks less like a disruption and more like a demonstration. It was a proof of concept delivered by the solar system that the planet's own electrical system was powerful enough to be harnessed. It is important to be careful not to claim more than the data supports here. There is no argument being made that the old telegraph network was some kind of forgotten super technology. But what the evidence does suggest is that in solving the real and pressing engineering problem of industrial noise, an institutional choice was made. The choice was to move from an open, grounded system to a closed, isolated one. This solved the problem of noise, but it also foreclosed, systematically, on any technological path that treated the Earth as an active participant. It was a choice for a controllable, metered and privately owned system over a chaotic, open, and potentially non-monetizable one. It answered the question of signal clarity, but in the process, it stopped anyone from asking what the noise might actually be. The transition was a monumental physical undertaking. We see it in sepia-toned photographs, gangs of linemen on poles, crossarms being fitted for a second wire, old iron ground spikes being pulled from the earth beside railroad tracks and abandoned. The Great Disconnection was not a metaphorical event. It was a physical severing, repeated millions of times, at every telegraph pole in every city, across the entire continent. With this severing, the path taken by men like Stubblefield became a dead end. His technology simply could not function in a world where the dominant paradigm was isolation from the Earth. He died in obscurity in 1928, a forgotten pioneer of a future that never arrived. The brief confirms Tesla's vision, but does not state the specific reason it faltered. This claim about lack of funding is an external detail not provided in the research. But it leaves you with a series of unsettling questions. What happens to a civilization's technological development when it engineers its primary information system to be deaf to its own planet? The official history says they were silencing static. When you look at the records of what was happening on the fringes, at what was being explored and then abandoned, it feels like a door that an entire industry very carefully closed.